Hi, my name is Julianne Cost. We're going to take the next few minutes to look at the selective adjustment controls in Lightroom Mobile. Now, just a word of caution, if you are a member of the Creative Cloud for Photography program or the Creative Cloud, then you have access to these tools. If you're using the free Lightroom Mobile application, then you don't have access to these selective adjustments. All right, I want to make an adjustment on the left side of this image. So I'm going to tap on selective adjustments, and then I'll tap the graduated filter on the top. Then I'll tap and drag into the image, and don't worry if you don't get this exactly correct the first time you drag it out, because you can always delete it or refine either the length of the gradient or the width or the angle or the position after you start making your edits. So I'm going to tap the light edit stack and just bring the exposure down a little bit on the left-hand side. And then I'll tap the color stack, and I want to change the temperature and the tint sliders. So I'd like this to go a little bit more towards green, so I'll drag the slider towards the left, and maybe add a little bit of yellow, so I'll drag the temperature over to the right. I'm just trying to make the left side look a little bit different from the blues on the right side. Now, in order to reposition, I can tap and drag on the blue square to reposition this graduated filter. I can lengthen the graduated filter by dragging one of the white outer lines in order to make it fade a little bit more gradually. And I can drag the middle line in order to rotate it if it's not at the correct angle. I have additional options that I can choose from. For example, I can change different effects like adding clarity or dehaze. I can switch to the detail panel if I wanted to remove or add noise, because sometimes when you add dramatic effects in one area, you might want to reduce the amount of noise. And I also have the option to increase or decrease my sharpening in order to soften areas a bit. All right, if I'm satisfied with that adjustment, I can tap the check mark in order to apply it. I can single finger tap to show a little before and after. You can see how I've just made that nice selective edit. Now, if I return back to the selective icon, I can tap the pin again if I need to modify it, either reposition it or change any of the options. For example, I might want to just back off on the decrease in exposure there a little bit. If I wanted to add a second graduated filter, then I could tap the graduated filter again. Now it has a plus icon, and I could tap and drag anywhere else in my image to add a second effect. I don't actually want that, so with that pin selected, meaning that it's the dark one and the active one, I'm going to tap on the trash can icon to remove it. Then I'll apply the change that I made because I also did darken down that area. Now in this next image, I want to add an off-center vignette, so I'll tap on the selective edits again, but this time I'll choose the radial filter, and I'll tap and drag out over this first seed pod here. Then I'll make some changes. I want to darken down the background, but if I tap on the light edit stack and change the exposure, making it darker, I'm getting the opposite effect. What's inside the radial filter is changing, not the outside. So across the top, there's an icon to flip the effect. So now what's outside of the radial filter is darkened down. I can reposition this pin by just tapping and dragging on the blue dot in the center. I can also drag the circle larger by tapping on any of the small white icons. I can also change the fade range. Let me just remove this edit stack here so that we can see what happens when I tap on the larger circle that has the gradient in it. When I tap and drag up, the feather goes to 0 and I get a hard edge. If I tap and drag down, the feather gets softer and softer. I think I'll be okay with a feather of somewhere around maybe 50%. And then I'll return back to the light edit stack. I don't need to darken down the background that much, so I'll pull back a little on that slider. Now the only problem is it's also darkening down the other seed pod. So I'd like to add a secondary radial filter. I'll tap the icon again and then tap and drag out. This time I'll reposition it and I'll tap in the white line area in order to just rotate the shape a bit to fit that seed pod. And in this case, I do want to affect the inside area, but I actually want to increase the exposure, so I'll drag the exposure slider over to the right. I'll use the small white dot to make this a little bit smaller and then just reposition it. Of course, I have all of these other options like the color and effect that I could also change. In fact, let's go ahead and move the temperature slider a little bit to the right in order to warm up that second pod. I'll tap the check mark, and with a single finger tap, we can see a little before and after. And of course, all of these edits are non-destructive and re-editable, so you can go in at any time and make adjustments. So there you go, two excellent tools, the radial filter and the selective filter in Lightroom Mobile for making selective or local adjustments. And of course, if you're a subscriber to Creative Cloud or the Creative Cloud for Photography plan, all of the changes that you make here on your mobile device will be synchronized across devices as well as to Lightroom on the desktop. My name's Julianne. Thanks for watching.